matagal lang kami ng UB online. It all started with just one ID. Sobrang na-appreciate ko ang beauty niya. Then, when my life got tougher, tinulungan niya ako. I didn't have to go out to pay or enroll my billers. Wala siyang hinihingi in return. One transfer can be free kasi lagi siyang may time for me, even to deposit my check. Ba siya mag-alaga kahit peak banking hours pa. Move on na ako from others. UB Online is my forever.
What happens when we digitally transform our ways? What we thought was once unreachable becomes accessible. Not only do we make information easily accessible, we make it possible for businesses to have access to solutions that will help grow their business. We create a space to prevent misinformation and establish information that can be trusted and verified. We reinvent the way information is communicated to build trust and transparency within the community. More than just reinvention, it's prevention. We're not just creating disruptions for the sake of sounding innovative. We drive reinvention to prevent fraud and irregularities from happening. Even simple information can contribute to everyone's transformation. That's why big problems become big solutions. And when we digitally transform how we do logistics, adding instantly becomes multiplying. To make all these happen, be with Xlog. Let's unite and transform the community. Be part of the community. Xlog.
Good day! Welcome to Blockchain Applications in the Real-World Use Cases. This webinar is presented by the Phoenix Information and Communication Technology Committee and sponsored by Union Bank of the Philippines. Before we start, may we request everybody to join us in a prayer to be followed by the Philippine National Anthem.
Heavenly Father, you are our Creator, our light, our wisdom and strength. May we ask for your guiding hand to lead us through this forum today and every day as we accomplish our work and various tasks. We pray for joy, enthusiasm, and fulfillment in our work. May we conduct ourselves and our business dealings in an environment of fairness, respect, and compassion. May we ask you to enter the hearts and minds of our leaders and countrymen. Give them strength and wisdom so that they may lead us through these difficult times with honesty, integrity, humility, and selfishness. Finally, we pray that you extend your healing hand over us, our families, and our nation, and help us overcome this health crisis that has claimed so many lives, including the lives of many of our friends, family members, and colleagues. Please heal those who are sick and guide the hands and minds of our doctors and nurses as they care for them. All these we humbly pray. Amen.
May I call the host and moderator of today's webinar. He is the Vice Chairman of Phoenix's ICT Committee and also the Managing Partner of Goriseta Africa Coton and Saavedra, Attorney Mark Goriseta.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mark Goriseta, your host and moderator for today's webinar. This webinar is simultaneously broadcasted live via Phoenix's official Facebook page and YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us this wonderful Thursday afternoon, and we are thrilled to have you on ICT Committee's kickoff webinar for the year. This event has been made possible by our partner, Union Bank of the Philippines. Now, to formally start today's webinar, may I call on Phoenix's President and Partner Deal Advisory of KPMG RG Manabat & Co., Mr. Michael Gorin. Mike.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Mark. Looking all dapper today, as usual. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to our guest speakers, Ramon Duarte from Union Bank. Thank you, Mon. Arvin Yason of Accenture Philippines, Joey Inyon of ShipTech Solutions, and Luis Benaventura, Guild Games. Thank you for participating in our webinar today. And of course, thank you to our sponsor, Union Bank of the Philippines. To my dear Phoenix members and guests this afternoon, welcome to the first webinar of the ICT Committee for the year. We will surely have many more of these kinds of webinars in the coming months. I expect all attendees to learn from our discussions and leave this webinar more aware as our guest speakers discuss blockchain applications and their real-world use cases. So what are the implications of blockchain for finance and for business in general? With that question, I am reminded of a KPMG publication from a few years back that I believe continue to be true for us today. Allow me to go through them. The principles of blockchain technology continues to hold great promise for finance organizations and for businesses in general, and naturally, the companies that they all operate in. So what are these principles and promises? Number one, increased efficiency from transparent records and a single source of truth. As you know, by creating one version of a ledger that is synchronized across computers, blockchain can eliminate out-of-sync ledgers and therefore the need for reconciliations. Number two, enhance data integrity to reduce loss. With immutable records that are visible to everyone involved, blockchain may improve data accuracy and security, help reduce the risk of fraud, and show compliance through an audit trail. Again, these items will depend on the level of maturity of the application of blockchain to our respective companies. A third item that I'd like to mention would be improve customer experience through faster processing. By using blockchain to share information with our clients, vendors, companies may be able to tap sales opportunities and then serve customers far more quickly than with traditional systems for setting up relationships. And then lastly, higher availability of capital and lower cost of business. Thanks to consensus mechanisms and smart contracts, blockchain can minimize the time that capital is tied up for a transaction, instead triggering an automatic transfer of funds upon an agreed set of conditions. So blockchain is really intended to have significant impacts on the finance function and on us as users. And as what we have seen, most organizations will gradually adopt the technology as they envision a new operating model for finance. So allow me again to enumerate some of the trends that we expect to see or maybe are currently seeing as a result of blockchain adoption. Number one, blockchains will connect to existing financial systems. Despite the benefits of blockchain, it will not replace traditional ERP systems overnight. And then blockchains will be a hybrid of private and public ledgers. As blockchain evolves, we expect finance organizations to start with private blockchains, as you would expect, and then which will enable them to retain sensitive data while gradually embracing more public ledgers. The regulatory environment, and then lastly, the regulatory environment will remain in flux. As blockchain decentralizes financial activities, governments, not just the Philippines, will continue striving to understand and then regulate the said technology. So as mentioned, we expect a new level of data transparency and efficiency gains. Blockchain opens finance organizations to a world of new possibilities. And I'm really looking forward to this afternoon session to better understand real-world and very practical use cases. So allow me to leave you with these questions as we are about to hear from the speakers. So number one, what are your business transactions and pain points that are best suited for blockchain and which are better addressed but by maybe other types of technologies? Number two, what kind of infrastructure will be required and how will it be funded? Third, who will be in charge of managing a blockchain and admitting new participants? Then how will this impact talent management strategies? Number four would be, how can blockchain impact the finance function's role as an enterprise data steward, as well as the CFO's approach to innovation and investments? And then lastly, how can blockchain improve risk management, which I'm sure is a top priority for most boards and senior officials? So as I end my opening, I would like to acknowledge our hardworking committee officers led by its chairman, Ray Lugtu, by our vice chairs, our MC this afternoon, Attorney Mark Goriseta. Thank you for being very active, Attorney Mark. And another vice chair, Bong Paloma. And of course, ICT Committee's Liaison Director, Ms. Zondi Garcia. More power to the committee, and mabuhay ang Phoenix.
Thank you, President Mike, for that comprehensive welcome remarks. So everyone, again for today, we are very fortunate to bring you powerhouse speakers for this webinar. As you may all know, blockchain applications go far beyond cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Blockchain, as mentioned by President Mike, impacts various sectors and businesses since the technology increases trust, security, transparency, the traceability of data shared across the business network, and it delivers cost savings with new efficiencies. In today's webinar, our speakers will discuss to us or with us the various real-world use cases of blockchain that we may be able to apply in our businesses as finance professionals. Each speaker in today's webinar will have 15 to 20 minutes for their presentation. They'll be followed by a Q&A or an open forum session. Now, let me just remind you, or all of the participants in the meeting room, to use the Q&A button on your screen for your questions. I will try to go through all the questions as time permits. So now, let me introduce you to our first two speakers. Our first speaker is Mr. Ramon Duarte. He heads Union Bank of the Philippines Agile Enabled Group's Transaction Banking and Platform Development Unit, where he is responsible for delivering on a strategy to craft and embed the banking experience into emerging ecosystem platforms as part of the bank's larger version to become a technology company with banking utilities. Prior to this, Mon headed up the bank's project management, process, and quality units during the initial phases of Union Bank's digital transformation program. Mon has held various other roles in product development, electronic channels management, and led the bank's core banking transformation projects in the mid-2000s. Before joining Union Bank, he held roles in the transaction banking businesses at ABN AMRO Manila and Citibank Manila. Our second speaker is Mr. Joey Inyon, the Chief Operating Officer of ShipTech Solutions Corporation, a startup behind the logistics orchestration platform Xlog, a solution that enables operational and financial efficiency for businesses in logistics through digital capabilities. So with that, let us all welcome to the virtual floor, Mr. Mon Duarte, to be followed by Mr. Joey Inyon. So welcome, Mon and Joey. Feel free to proceed when ready. Thank you. Thank you also for sponsoring the event.
Oh, most welcome. And thank you for allowing us to do that and to sponsor this event and to speak in this in this Phoenix forum. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, President Mark. Thank you, President Mike, for setting the stage. It's very much in line to what I'm going to be talking about, which is a specific example of blockchain. So, if I may, I'm going to now share my screen.
Please. Yes.
Okay.
Looks good, Mon.
Okay.
In the age where exchanges of goods and services are heavily connected, financial supply chain has never been so critical. Suppliers, distributors, and buyers continue to find ways to become relevant by reducing high production cost, meeting tight consumer buyer demands, and becoming more economically scalable. Add more initiatives of reducing manual processing of invoices that exposes risks of inefficiency and errors due to the transfer of unprotected information. Last September 26, Union Bank launched the financial supply chain on blockchain, the first in terms of supply chain management in the Philippines. With the FSC on blockchain, working capital and cash flow management becomes the very strategic weapon of choice. Suppliers, distributors, and buyers are single-handedly connected through the blockchain. This promotes transparency through distributed ledgers and smart contracts that translate to the elimination of fraudulent transactions, such as double financing. FSC on blockchain supports multiple financing options at various points of the supply chain, such as payables financing, receivables financing, and reverse factoring. Transactions on the FSC system are powered by IBM's Hyperledger Fabric, the technology that enables seamless transaction without compromising security and efficiency in the supply chain. The evolution of how Filipinos do business has begun. And this is powered by Union Bank.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm coming through loud and clear. I am Ramon Duarte, and I head the transaction banking business of Union Bank. Now, that short video is a quick intro into Union Bank's FSC, or Financial Supply Chain Platform. It is, yes, built on blockchain technology, and I think it is an excellent example of how blockchain tech has some real-world applications in not only the banking sector in our business, but as I'll try to explain later, has some real benefits to communities we have onboarded onto the platform. Let me clarify one point though. The video said, quote unquote, last September. That's actually September 2019, when we first launched the supply chain platform. Apologies, that was the video, that was the track that was in this video, produced a couple years back for one of the events we joined, and it was the best suited, I thought, and the right length. No? So since 2019, we have gotten much traction on this. We have now over 60 communities across multiple industries, primarily around agriculture, feeds, and as well as FMCG. Around the 60 anchors, there are about 360 members of these communities already. These are mostly SMEs. And we typically, through this facility, extend them lines of up to around 20 million. Through the platform, we have processed about 20,000 invoices in 2021, with a total value of some 11.3 billion. And we have done significant portion of that was financed through the platform as well. My message there is obviously that this is up and running in real world today, and it's all made possible by the blockchain tech. So let me talk more about the supply chain financing platform and how the blockchain tech comes in.
In the age for exchanges of
Supply chain financing is, of course, nothing new, right? Many banks and financing companies have engaged in this form of lending for some years, for many decades, actually. Some might be more familiar with the term reverse factoring. It provides a form of short-term financing for the typically smaller, less creditworthy suppliers by letting them sell or discount their receivables from the larger, more established anchors, larger firms. There are many variants of this product, but it is always through a process of document exchange wherein the invoices to be factored are presented by the borrowing supplier, confirmed by the principal or the anchor, and then paid out by the lender, in this case, a bank, for example. This is tracked through to due date, and at which point the lender collects from the principal. Companies engage in this with two primary objectives: to reduce supply chain risk from the financial processes and to optimize working capital. With advanced payments, suppliers benefit from the reduced day sales outstanding, and they also benefit from the lower cost of funding due to buyer-centric program arrangements. On the buyer side, they benefit from better days payables outstanding, either by harmonizing collections or by using the program to lobby for better terms. Of course, with the program in place, they also improve the relationships with their key suppliers, and that's a very important factor. And to us, the banks, of course, it's good business. It deepens and strengthens our relationships with our key anchor corporate accounts, and it gives us an opportunity to offer financing to their community of suppliers. So that's the basic of supply chain financing. It's done today by many lenders, but it is a tedious process involving much manual processes. And it's costly because so many control processes need to be put in place to mitigate the risks of all these manual operations. However, like many other products in Union Bank, we sought to further innovate using technology, while keeping to the main objectives, of course, of reducing trade risk and to optimize working capital. As shown earlier in the video, Union Bank's SCF, or supply chain financing, is powered by blockchain. In fact, it is the first financial supply blockchain in the country. We do get a lot of questions as to why blockchain was the underlying technology. And the answer is quite simple. It further reduces and mitigates the supply chain or trade risks. Union Bank's SCF is an app-based product built within our business banking app, which is our version of online banking for corporates and SME businesses. This means that both buyers and suppliers will get instant access to their supply chain financing transactions via the application. The processes of invoice presentment, invoice acceptance, deductions processing, discounting, request for financing, reports generation, etc., are all managed through the app. And this is where the blockchain piece comes in. It governs and orchestrates and enforces the rules involved in the operation of all these processes. It enables full transparency to all relevant parties without compromising security or data privacy. It optimizes the trade processes by automating the flow of those processes governed by smart contracts within the platform. And also through smart contracts, we are able to ensure that all the processes are executed according to the relationships within the community members. It's a very important point. And through the combination of these, let's say, capabilities, we can automate the financing and facilitate community-based lending, which in the end is our objective. It's largely automated, and the blockchain technology eliminates most of the control or risk mitigation activities. It is therefore scalable and reduces costs, which in turn means we can afford to offer it to a broader range of communities, even those with relatively smaller financing requirements. With enhanced security, transparency, and digital processes, we allow communities to reduce supply chain risks, not just through providing a financing program, but by also providing them with a platform to securely and efficiently execute their financial trade processes. With this technology in place, we can also further enhance our fulfillment of the second main objective of the companies, engaging in supply chain finance, which is to optimize cash flows. Part of the challenge is that the way supply chain financing is done today, let's say the traditional way, it's very self-limiting. It tends to be buyer-focused, with banks focusing on really large buyer companies with reputable suppliers, losing sight of those who need the financing the most, which are the smaller SMEs, and perhaps even the micro SMEs. Even if they engage the SME market, they would usually do this at a higher rate. It also doesn't help that the financing processes are highly manual and traditional, which decreases the potential to optimize the turnaround times. Union Bank SEF aims to eliminate all these limitations. We started this by looking beyond the buyer-seller relationship and recognized that the need for supply chain financing is on the ecosystem level, from tier 2 suppliers like third-party logistics providers or contract growers, all the way up to the retailers. Traditional SEF would focus on an anchor and their tier 1 suppliers with reverse factoring. We do have this product though, of course, as payable discounting. However, we also offer an SME-centric program allowing even micro SMEs to benefit from discounting. Thus, a tier 1 supplier can benefit from the SEF both as a supplier and as a buyer. Factor in real-time processing, auto and optional discounting arrangements, real-time self-service reporting, and various other features. Suppliers are ensured of maximizing the benefits from the program, while buyers can benefit from implementing the program at scale, strengthening the cash flows for the entire community. Now, in order to fully maximize the cash flow optimizations for anchors, we must also look into their buyers. Of course, the anchor can further enhance their cash flow by looking into their receivables. By offering their buyers a way to automate payments and get access to financing to settle invoices, the anchor benefits from enhanced collection processes and even shorter days sales outstanding. We do this through our dealer financing program. In the same way that suppliers benefit from payables discounting through lower rates due to a community-based program anchored on the larger anchor entities, buyers under this program also benefit from a community approach. MSME buyers do not need to go through full credit assessment because the bank relies on their relationship with the anchor and the closed-loop automated implementation of the program via supply chain financing, driven by the key blockchain technologies. Buyers benefit from a collateral-free business line that they can use to settle invoices. This means buyers will have access to additional funds to purchase additional inventory or to prolong cash outflows. With these two programs in place, supply chain ecosystems can maximize their benefit from the platform by providing financing access to the entire ecosystems. And all of this is made possible by the underlying blockchain technology. I'm not going to go, I mean, there's much more to talk about in terms of product variants we can have in supply chain financing, in this supply chain financing platform. But I just went into those two main programs as they are perhaps the best representation, best examples of the value proposition of supply chain financing, especially driven by blockchain technology. Let me now set the stage for Joey Inyon, our next presenter and partner from ShipTech, our partner at Union Bank.
Thank you, Ramon. And good afternoon.
Go ahead, Joey.
Yes, let me pull out my presentation for a moment. All right. Okay, so again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Ramon, for that. I'm Joey of Xlog, and I'm here to share with you more about our logistics use case in relation to the embedded banking solution, or the SCF of Union Bank. So in Xlog, what we do here is when we embed the SCF into our platform, we are also able to create this additional layer of verification that happens even before an invoice is presented and financed by the bank. Meaning with Xlog, we are able to capture the information of the transaction when it was created, when it was fulfilled, what are the breakdown of these transactions and these invoices, and even down to the communication of the different parties that are involved in the transaction, really creating that complete provenance of a transaction. And like what Ramon was saying, creating that transparency also. But before I expound further on this, let me also explain what Xlog is doing. So we are a technology and solutions provider, and we focus on the orchestration of supply chain and logistics. We do this by creating and enabling the different players of the logistics to go digital through our products. Because in logistics, it still comes with many inefficiencies. And as we all know, with the growing demand for digital, it is becoming more and more evident now for these businesses to transform in order to survive. And we do see this with a lot of the big players out there. But what about the SMEs or the micro SMEs? From firsthand experience, ShipTech knows how difficult it is to digitize. And we also know that it's not a cheap thing to do. Since 2016 or since 2015, we've developed the platform. And we know that this is not something that's going to be easy for these SMEs. And this is the opportunity that we saw as Xlog. So now with Xlog, what we do is that we tap these different players in the industry, these exporters, importers, the freight forwarders, and even down to their suppliers, the shipping carriers, the truckers, and their drivers, right? What we do is we provide them a turnkey solution that will instantly help them go digital, right? So in Xlog, what they can do, first of all, they can offer their services online. They can do bookings online as well. Now the documentation is also captured online. So we disregard all these manual papers that is being communicated between the parties. They can also monitor the transactions from even on land and at sea, all on the Xlog platform. And towards the end of the transaction, they can now invoice, they can now pay, and they can now opt for financing, completing again that provenance of a transaction. And what we do is that by creating this baseline, or by creating this capability for the different, or orchestrating this capability for the different parties, we get to put that in a black box, which is also a product of Xlog. This black box, the purpose of this black box is to have that single source of truth, meaning in every transaction that transpires in the platform, You get there the updates of the transaction. But not only that, even the communication that you have with the different parties is also recorded on this platform. I'm sure most of you do this as well, internally and externally. You create your group chats with your companies or with your colleagues. You have your emails to communicate. Sometimes you communicate via SMS. Um, but how do you put all of that in one platform? It sounds very complicated, but that's actually what we're trying to do with Xlog and what we're trying to do for the communities on the Xlog platform. So more than just the digitization aspect, our intention really is to show the tangible benefits that come with digitizing your operations. And that is what we did with Union Bank and with Xlog. So we started, first of all, by offering our joint solution to these logistics communities. I have with you today a use case that we have done with one of our clients. Their business is in the business of freight forwarding, which means they facilitate the transactions of their customers, the likes of these FMCGs, and they relay it to their various suppliers in order to fulfill the transaction. So with this kind of business, they liaise or they communicate with multiple parties, which may also result to operational inefficiencies, especially when you're doing it manually. At the same time, in this kind of business, for their customers, at an average, they must get around 30 to 60-day payment terms. But on the flip side, the service providers have to be paid maximum 15 days, or else prices can go up. And this is just normal because, for example, the likes of a trucker would have to pay their drivers every day or every end of the week, which means cash is very important for these companies. And this obviously creates that gap in the cash flow, especially for the freight forwarders. So we started with this. We started by addressing these pain points. First of all, with Xlog, we helped this freight forwarder digitize their operations. Now, their transactions with the truckers, with the shipping carriers are all online. They monitor online, and even the approval process of their invoices and the payments and the financing are also all online. By doing so, we are not only able to help them streamline their process, but now we were able to help them boost their cash flow, and that is through the embedded SCF product on the Xlog platform. So what we did and what the freight forwarders are now able to do is, first of all, they get to extend their payment terms. That's through Union Bank. So now they have about 60-day payment a 60-day payment term, while at the same time providing their service providers the ability to collect payments as early as day one. So instantly, it becomes a win-win solution for both of these parties. And on top of this, we were also able to help them reduce their costs further because by having this early payment, truckers or the suppliers are now able to give them a lower rate. And on top of that as well, these freight forwarders were also able to grow and expand their business with their customers simply because they now can accept more transactions, more volume, because they know that they have more room to work around. And that's through Xlog and Union Bank. And really, if you see here, this was all made possible because we were able to put all of this on a platform, in a platform that you can trust, in a platform that you can use to verify. So with this, companies are able to get a healthier cash flow. They're able to streamline their process, and they were also able to increase the transparency and accountability. Just to share something quickly, it happened to one of our customers as well, wherein during the height of the pandemic, they lost a lot of, to put it simply, they lost a lot of money because someone from their company was working with the different suppliers. Basically, they were repeating invoices or they were overpaying. And this was all because they did it manually. They paid it manually. And this could have been easily prevented through our platform here. And that's the fourth item here of the benefit actually, is to reduce the risk and the fraud. And this is just one use case that we were able to do with one of our communities or one of our customers. And this is easily something that can be replicated with other freight forwarders, even with the exporters, the importers, and all the different communities in the logistics industry. So really, I'd like to end my presentation in this. For Xlog, our vision really is to empower the businesses and the people who run the business. And we know that to empower also means that you must be able to trust. But in business, we know that for you to trust, you must also know how to verify all of these. And all of that can be made possible through the use of Xlog, and now in partnership with the products of Union Bank. So thank you everyone for giving me the opportunity today, and yeah, have a good day.
Thank you, Joey and Mon. Thank you, Joey and
Mark,
Mon.
can I jump in with one thing? There's one thing I failed
Sure, go ahead.
to point out. There's a special twist which I didn't quite get to highlight. There's a special twist on how Union Bank and ShipTech are delivering the benefits of supply chain financing to the community of Xlog. And that is through what we call embedded banking. I had told you earlier that the access to the facility is through our Union Banking app. But in the case of our close partners, Xlog, what we've done is we've extended the facility by building it, connecting it directly within the Xlog platform that Joey has been showing you here. Okay. It's some of those processes I talked about are now available or at least triggered within the Xlog platform itself. We very much see at Union Bank that the future of banking is going to be in this form. You know, banking will largely disappear and will become embedded in the processes of our customers. Okay,
Right.
This is an exciting concept for us because we see future is really going to be all digital, and perhaps this concept of embedded banking is something we can maybe discuss in another Finex forum at some point. No? That's just a small point I wanted to point out, but it just kind of shows how all
connects
all the dots, right? Sorry, Mark. Let me turn over back to you. Thank you for giving.
Yeah, thanks. We'll have that. Yes, Mon will for sure. I'll talk to President Mike, and Mike, right? We can probably have that another session for the ICT committee. For of course inviting again Union Bank. So again, Mon and Joey, thank you for your presentation. So wow. So there you go, members. That's one of the actual use cases or actual use of blockchain specifically for supply chain management and financing. And you've seen what Union Bank of the Philippines and with their partner Xlog can do for you, the members of Phoenix, and your businesses. So now, Mon and Joey, please, if you can, please stay for a while so we can talk more about the platform and a blockchain and technology itself during the open forum later in the program. So now allow me to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Arvin Yason. Arvin is the lead. Okay, Aljon, if you want. Arvin is the lead of Accenture Manila Innovation Hub. He is responsible for scaling innovation and the use of modern methodologies and technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, extended reality, Internet of Things, agile practices, and lean design. He's also the lead of the Accenture CIO teams based in the Philippines who are responsible for the development, maintenance, and operations for over 300 applications used by Accenture's global workforce. So for now, let's all welcome Mr. Arvin Yason. Arvin, thank you again for accepting our invitation. So yes, the virtual floor is yours. Arvin, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm going to share my screen. Please confirm that you guys can see it.
Looks good. Thanks, Arvin.
Thank you. So I'll take about 10, 12 minutes to discuss other use cases. Now, Mon in the earlier presentation and his team really talked really well about the applications of blockchain and financial services in the supply chain. My intent for the next 10 to 12 minutes is to really look at other use cases in other industries. No? ultimately, this will be about the flow of financial value anyway. So there is an impact on possibly applications back to financial services also. So I'll jump into this quickly. First area is really around the concept of digital identity. During the pandemic, I think we all experienced this. No, I had my driver's license expire, and that was and my passport also expired. So legally speaking, I did not have any government ID that I could use to present for any transaction that required the government ID. And it was hard to renew a lot of these documents during, especially the first year of the pandemic, no? Whether getting an appointment at DFA or getting an appointment at LTO, and even without the scheduling problems, I personally was honestly afraid to get my IDs renewed, no? So the use of blockchain and distributed ledgers for digital identity has been something that Accenture has been looking at even way before the pandemic, no? And well, again, the use case here is potentially replacing physical IDs that have expiry dates, that can be faked, and that can be misused into something that's immutable using blockchain technology. So we have this concept called the known traveler, no? And the idea here is potentially, again, replacing the physical passport or augmenting it, if not replacing it, with a digital passport. Part of this could also be adapted, again, to the post-pandemic world where governments around the world, whether local, national, or everything in between, are requiring, other than having a proof of identity, having proof of vaccination. And the challenge right now is that the Pasig QR pass, while it's a great QR pass that I could use anywhere in Pasig, is pretty much useless anywhere else, no? So before I travel to another territory, I actually have to get certification pa. So if governments were to collaborate and actually build a digital passport that could be used across multiple territories, including, again, proof of vaccination, that would be a great solution that would use blockchain and also remove a lot of friction, not just for travelers, but even for a lot of government agencies. No? The other thing is really more around helping a particular subsector. So Accenture were part of the ID 2020 consortium. Microsoft is one of the other partners. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we actually helped build the proof of concept. And the use case is really here more for refugees, no? Particularly those coming from countries in the Middle East who had to leave their home country and lost or did not have any form of identification along the way. Now, we would tie any digital identity to some form of physical security, right? So biometrics being the number one technique we would use to actually start building the digital analog of the physical identity. And again, the benefit of this is that you don't even need, if you have to hide your passport because, say, you're crossing a dangerous area, you don't want to be identified as a particular nationality or a particular ethnicity, you don't need your paper passport, no? Your biometrics essentially are your identity. Obviously, that will have a mirror or a proxy on a blockchain, and that will be used by the requisite and the authorized government bodies to identify you. Okay, so moving quickly to the next use case. Actually, digital identity, we'll come back to this later on in some of the other use cases. Digital identity is the foundation for a lot of the potential applications for blockchain in other industries. No. Second, a bit more consumer facing is customer loyalty. So a few years ago, this is just one example. We worked with Cathay Pacific to actually onboard their Asia Miles program on the blockchain. A lot of us on this call, no, we have our own mileage programs. I have, I think, 2 or 3 that I'm part of. Obviously, they kind of lapsed over the pandemic. But one of the key friction points with airline miles, in my personal experience, and I'm sure it's your experience also, is number one, when you're trying to redeem it, it's so hard to remember the password. Number two, it takes time for the product or service that you're redeeming to actually get to you. No? So what we've done with Cathay Pacific and Asia Miles is actually to remove a lot of the friction points. Again, in the previous discussion, the Xlog and Union Bank teams talk about removing a lot of the friction in the supply chain. It's the same technique applied now to redemption of rewards for, in this case, airline miles. You could easily apply it to other forms of consumer-facing services. No, I think in the Philippines, McDonald's was actually one of the first to onboard on Loyalty Coin. and use that particular solution for customer loyalty. We work for globally. Accenture works with a lot of companies, from beverage manufacturers, no, from beer to wine, all the way to even music and digital assets. And the vision here is not to have thousands and thousands of different customer loyalty programs, but by building it on a digital platform where you can easily onboard other partners and connect potentially different networks together, it should be easier also in the midterm to long term to actually take, for example, your airline miles, which maybe right now the program doesn't really. I mean, that's for me. That's the other friction point. Now, when I look at the redemption program for a lot of the mileage programs I'm part of, I don't really see anything that I like to redeem for. I mean, I have coffee makers, right, and all of those things, but they're not really useful to me. But if I could say turn my mileage into say tokens on the Steam store, di ba, for video games, that's something that I would actually love to be able to do. No? Okay. Shifting to a different area and somewhat closer to financial services, let's talk about insurance. And again, the technique that we're applying here is really two things. No? Removing a lot of customer friction by actually optimizing the supply chain, removing manual processes, etc. And again, hinging on digital identity. I think we've had this experience where you've gotten into an accident, your car is insured, no, but you've gotten into an accident, and particularly in the Philippines, although to be honest, it's gotten better, but the friction points are still there, diba? For the most part, you are still required to submit a police report, you're required to submit pictures. In a few cases, if it's a major accident, an adjuster has to actually look at your car, diba, to confirm it's happened. No? What we're proposing in terms of the use of blockchain is to actually combine it with other technologies also. The thinking here is that if you are a good driver, and let's put that first, as one of the assumptions, and how do we validate that assumption? We'll talk about it in a bit. If you're a good driver with a good history, and it's your first time of getting into an accident, and it would be easy to validate in a digital fashion that the accident was not contrived or was not fabricated, we should be able to pay the claim of the insured party in near real-time fashion. So how will we do that with blockchain and other technologies? First, you need to identify that the person driving the car is the person who's insured. No? So that's again where digital identity will be one of the first building blocks. With some of our customers, we're combining again blockchain with Internet of Things technologies to confirm that the operator of an insured vehicle is the person who's actually insured. Number one. Number two, again, we gather data from the driving behavior of that particular insured person to see if that person generally follows traffic laws, doesn't overspeed, and in general drives in safe areas, right? And once that is established, both the history and the behavior, we just need to establish that during the event that the driver was really the one driving the car. And again, we'll use technologies like IoT, etc., digital identity. There might be an app that the insurance company might offer, and you just have to opt in and say, okay, I'll allow my location to be tracked as long as I can enjoy low premiums, right? And I get the benefit of getting the payout immediately, right? So what could easily happen is that if all of those things happen, are in place, you establish digital identity, you're able to track behavior, you're able to track usage. Minutes after an accident happens, you could actually notify the insured party and say, you know what, we know it's you driving the car. It looks like it's not your fault. Looks like it's weather is one of the main issues. It was raining heavily in your place, diba, and your car dropped into an open manhole. Clearly not your fault. We're pre-approving your insurance claim. And that is a huge differentiator when it comes to being able to not just retain, but to also engage more customers, no, and possibly get more business. In the past, insurance companies were viewed as a group that would talk to you at the beginning when they wanted you to buy their package or their coverage, but would ignore you when it came to time to actually pay out the benefits. No, so blockchain combined again with some other technologies like IoT could actually enable a reversal of the usual situation, no? And actually turn insurance companies into heroes from the consumer standpoint. Again, the second potential use case in insurance companies is a reapplication of what was discussed earlier in supply chain. Just being able to clear transactions between different parties much faster, no? Whether it's between the insurance companies and say the third parties, no, the CASA and the parties involved in paying out and covering the premiums, or it could be inter transactions between different insurance companies. Maybe it's for international travel and they have reciprocal arrangements, that type of thing. Blockchain and distributed ledgers will really help reduce the amount of time it takes to clear those transactions and also reduce cost as well. Okay, just checking the time. Okay, we'll shift to a different industry. Let's talk about healthcare and life sciences naman. With healthcare, blockchain has several applications. First is the ability to share more data between authorized parties, no, between government agencies, between public health services, between medical companies, etc., in a more secure fashion. Again, the ability to actually store data is similar to any database, but the ability to, again, give permission to certain parties and to make sure that the information is mutable is actually very, very valuable in the healthcare area. A lot of the challenges currently with healthcare is the fact that because of the security requirements when it comes to health records to patient health records, it actually makes it harder to share data between authorized partners. You have to have so many controls. With blockchain, there is a way to actually do more sharing, more collaboration of data in a very secured fashion. Okay. Shifting to a different area, and this is going back to supply chain. Locally, there's been news again about fake medicines and the action that the government is taking, which I'm not criticizing, no, it's a logical solution, is to actually, again, ban sari-sari stores from selling medicines. No? And it's a quick fix, really. No? But there could be more elegant solutions going forward. No? So one of the things that could be used from a blockchain standpoint is, again, using it on the supply chain, being able to track the provenance of medicine to make sure that it's coming from authorized sources, from manufacturer to distributor to even end user. And again, you can use that potentially. A local distributor like Watson's or Mercury Drug could offer a solution where you can validate that this particular medicine actually came from Unilab, right? Or even eventually, potentially, sari-sari stores could benefit that if Unilab would host a consortium, or Unilab and the drug manufacturers would host a consortium that would actually provide the data to the end consumer. Now, a more specialized use case is really specialized tracking and tracing, as well as specialty logistics. And again, very relevant in the time of COVID. A lot of the vaccines we use require special handling. They have to be refrigerated. They have expiry dates. They should not be diluted, etc. Right? So again, blockchain can help provide an additional layer of validation, not just in terms of provenance, but also in handling. Again, this would be in combination with technologies like Internet of Things, having sensors on the delivery trucks in the storage areas, and tying smart contracts to them to make sure that for the duration of the life cycle of the product, the conditions that need to be met to store those products safely actually are maintained. And the moment, let's say, the temperature in a particular storage facility increases above the acceptable level, then the smart contract will be executed. Everything in that particular storage facility is considered tainted. And on the blockchain, it's marked as spoiled medicine. It should not be used anymore by end consumers, essentially. No. Again, the last area here is obviously the last mile to the patient. Ultimately, what we need to do from an industry standpoint is to educate people, to show them the benefit of blockchain, to demystify it. And it's really about helping patients, particularly those in very niche cases, those who have specific conditions. No, there are medicines right now being made that are actually tailored, for example, to the DNA of a person, and that is potentially problematic because if you receive the medicine that's meant for a different patient, the effects on you could be either negligible or negative. No, so being able to assure the patient that this particular medicine that was tailored to your DNA actually is the one that was even meant for you is actually groundbreaking, and again, something that could enable better customer satisfaction and less friction in the overall process. Okay, I'm in the last slide already. Before I talk about these use cases, no, I think it's very important to understand that blockchain is an evolved version of databases, yes, but it also really enables non-traditional partnerships, no? And the sharing of data where in the past it was not safe or it was not possible. So I'll talk about three use cases here that talk about the sharing economy. No? So the first company or startup in profile is Slockit. It's a bad example in the sense that Slockit it no longer really exists as a company, but they had the great idea. No? The idea of Slockit is to use blockchain to actually enable incremental services for companies like Airbnb or Uber. So a lot of us use Airbnb already, right? And some Airbnbs are actually very nice in terms of the basic accommodations. But with Slockit, potentially, a guest could actually gain access to additional features. For example, there may be a locked minibar in the condo that you're Airbnb-ing in, or there could be a hot tub or a jacuzzi that's turned off, no? And you would have to pay extra. Potentially, again, using the power of blockchain and cryptocurrency, you could actually enable those microtransactions between the Airbnb host and the guest at real time by actually allowing the guest to pay for add-on services. Again, you would have to use IoT to be a bridge technology on top of blockchain, but you can allow those microtransactions, which before were not possible. If you rented a unit to a guest, essentially everything in the unit that's not locked down, they can use. And everything that's locked down, they can't use unless you're willing to go to the unit and unlock a particular room or take out a particular appliance for them to use. No? So Socket really removes again that friction for guests potentially. Second is another startup called Lazus. This one is called collaborative transportation because what they're aiming to do is to really copy the Uber or Lyft model, but take it to a different level. With Uber and Lyft and current ride-sharing companies, there is still a central governing body, no, that manages the relationship between the drivers and the riders. The intent of Lazus is to really decentralize that and to allow the ride owner or the driver to really get the maximum financial benefit from people sharing the ride essentially. No? And again, they're using the power of blockchain for this particular use case. No? And last one is Open Bazaar. Open Bazaar is simply eBay or Amazon, but again in a decentralized platform. No, a lot of sellers on these platforms, whether you're talking global platforms like Amazon or Alibaba or local platforms like Lazada, one of their key concerns is that a lot of these platforms can be monopolistic, if not duopolistic. No, Open Bazaar again aims similar to Lazus to decentralize that particular industry and allow people to be able to access buyers faster, and also the reverse, allowing buyers to actually find the seller and try to remove the middlemen and the aggregators out of the picture. I know I didn't talk to a lot of detail now about these use cases. The deck that I shared, actually, I made available to Mark and his team. They'll be sending it. The links are all there in the notes. Each of them probably is a 30-minute read, but these are all interesting use cases for blockchain. And again, maybe as a setup for the next speaker, for Luis, we really see blockchain as an enabler for the next wave of digital businesses and services. In the Philippines, we have this unique phenomenon that there are an increasing population of digital asset owners being enabled by what Luis and his industry are doing. And what we're really aiming to do with blockchain, at least from an Accenture standpoint, is to really maximize the value, maximize the security aspect, maximize the centralized aspect. And the way we approach it, from my team's perspective, is it's another tool that we can use. We look for the particular problems it's applicable for. And I would advocate for people to experiment and work with partners in the local industry. There are a lot of local partners. Union Bank obviously is one of them, but there are also startups that are really playing around with these use cases. And they're really, really interesting. And again, for the Philippines, I think it's really, really something that we should try to get ahead of against the rest of the world. So I'll end there. Mark, I'll hand off back to you. Thank you very much for allowing us to speak for the last 10 or 12 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you, Arvin. So again, very interesting use cases of blockchain technology for what I gathered from airline miles or customer loyalty to digital identity to I cannot imagine, or I would have thought, even for smart insurance in relation to digital identity. I also listed here a lot of use cases that you shared pertaining to healthcare, especially with respect to, of course, the concern of everyone, data sharing or data shared or to be shared, and also the use of blockchain pertaining to logistics. So yeah, I know, Arvin, that you have more examples, but you are actually limited only to these examples because of the limited time that we have. But yes, I think this will allow us and President Mike to invite you again in our next webinar here or session in Phoenix. But please do stay for our Q&A. I could see a lot of questions in our chat box, and also a lot of people are messaging me for questions specific to this technology. So yes, please do stay. Thank you. Our next speaker for today, our fourth speaker, last but not the least, is Mr. Luis Buenaventura. Luis is the country manager of Yield Guild Games. Luis spearheaded the YGG Guide, a knowledge-based guide for YGG scholars and managers, English and Filipino languages such as Tagalog, Bisaya, Ilocano, and Hiligaynon. He has achieved many accolades, pioneering various projects in the NFT and cryptocurrency industry. Luis was a co-founder of BloomX, a Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas licensed virtual currency exchange or virtual asset service provider exchange in the Philippines. Let's all welcome Luis Buenaventura. Hi, Luis. Thanks for being here. The floor is yours.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for the time. So I am wearing my Yield Guild hat today. So that means we're going to be talking about NFTs and play to earn, which is one of the subset areas, these focus areas of blockchain. So blockchain itself is a very, very large field of study now. And within that, there is NFTs, and it's very interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip through a presentation that normally takes about half an hour. So it's going to be a little bit fast. But hopefully I'll be able to give all of the kind of fundamentals. So I'll start with a quick story. The year is 2017. I am trying to raise money for my startup in San Francisco. I was one of the founders of BloomX, as Attorney Mark mentioned. And I was in San Francisco and I was trying to raise money. And when you're a Filipino founder in San Francisco, I'm not actually a native of any of that area. No, I was born and raised here in the Philippines. You do tend to not really know many people. So I ended up in a lot of these crypto meetups, which is usually in these bars in downtown San Francisco. And one evening when I was there, enjoying the free pizza and free beer, there was a group of Ethereum people who came up to me and said, hey, aren't you that guy who does cartoons about cryptocurrency and posts them on Twitter? And indeed, I was. I had been doing these crypto cartoons for a few months at that point, and some of them were actually slightly, kind of a little popular. The crypto community back in 2017 didn't have a lot of artists. So whenever someone would do a little bit of artwork about crypto, people would usually find it very compelling. So they said, hey, can you contribute some of your work to this little project that we're putting together? It's kind of like a trading card collection, but it's all digital. And you will be able to, people will be able to buy one copy of the card, and then it'll be like they have, kind of one copy of a physical card, but there's no physical version of it. You'll be one of the artists. We'll get maybe 7 other artists. And then, all of your work will be kind of distributed to collectors. And then, you'll make, the majority of the profits, et cetera, et cetera. So, remember that I was here basically enjoying free pizza and free beer in this crypto meetup. So I was like, yeah, okay, sure. I see no downside to this. I had never made a single peso or dollar from any of my work at that point. It was just something that I was having fun with. And, I liked when people found my drawings entertaining. So I said, yes, sure, of course. Now, as luck would have it, this project went absolutely nowhere. They never sold a single copy. And in fact, I completely forgot about the fact that it even existed, because by the end of that year, the startup that had been trying to put together this digital trading card collection idea had already gone bankrupt. They had shut down, right? So completely went out of my mind, completely forgot about it. Now, this talk is going to be the rest of this story. Now, this is called How to Start with NFT Art, but let's start with some definitions first. For the people who aren't completely familiar with this topic, when we say NFT, that's the kind of the important part of the term NFT art, no? Yeah, unfortunately, it's not a great marketing term because when people explain what NFT means, it actually makes it more confusing because you have words like non-fungible, like these are not words that people normally have to hear in real world language, no? So I usually say, just forget the NF part of the term. The important word here is token. Token. Why token? Because a token is a symbol. We know that tokens are symbols for other things. In this case, it is a symbol for ownership. So when we say NFT art, we mean that the token symbolizes ownership in a piece of art, right? And that is basically how we can wrap our heads around this concept. When you buy something valuable in the real world, when you buy a plot of land, a condo, a car, usually there is a certificate of ownership that kind of certifies that ikaw nga talaga yung bumili nun and it is now yours, right? Same thing with NFTs on the blockchain. These are certificates that are basically a proof of ownership of a particular thing. And it became very popular in digital art because digital art has no physical version already. So you kind of need a way to certify ownership in this digital thing. And it just so happens that NFT fits that bill. Now, there are a couple of different advantages for NFTs. One is that because it's on the blockchain, you have this great ability to track provenance. And if you've never heard of the term provenance, what that is it's like the history of a piece. No? So typically, if we're talking about a very young piece of artwork, there is no real provenance. There's just creator and then buyer. But if the artwork is very old, marami nang dinaanan na owners yan eh. So wouldn't it be amazing if there was a way that we could refer to the blockchain to check how many times a Picasso has changed hands over the last century? We don't currently have that. There is no way to currently do that without parang putting together, narratives or stories from other people. This is the first time that we're going to be able to do that in an infallible way, meaning that we can just look it up on the blockchain. We can see every single person who has ever owned a particular piece of art, and we can see how much they paid for it, how much they sold it for to the next person, and so on and so forth. No? So that's kind of very interesting. At least even from just an art historian standpoint, that's very interesting. The second ability that's very interesting about NFTs and NFT art is there's this concept of automatic royalties. Now, in the real world, when an artist, a painter, sells their work to a collector, they will make the majority of that price, that amount. However, when the collector sells it to someone else, the artist really has no way to know that transaction even happened. Unless the collector actually tells the guy, hey, I sold your work, I made a really nice profit out of it. There's no real way for the artist to know these things. The collector makes all of the money from reselling the work. The artist doesn't necessarily make anything, unless maybe there's some kind of legal contract that kind of binds that future transaction. Now, on the blockchain with NFT art, a lot of this stuff can be automatic. In fact, it is one of the most wonderful things about being an NFT artist, because even after I have sold this piece already, I can still make residual revenue from it, which is very interesting. Now, okay, so I'm gonna go back to my story. So remember that the startup that I was talking to, they basically went bankrupt. This was back in 2017. Fast forward 4 years. It's March 2021. I'm living in La Union at this point, and just kind of enjoying the beach life, whatever. We're all in the middle of the lockdown, so it's not as if there was anything going on in the city. Now, I wake up one Saturday morning and my Twitter inbox is blowing up with messages, and I don't know why. I thought I was being hit by spam or something. But every single one of them were all asking me whether or not I still owned some cards from that trading card collection back in 2017. And they said, you're one of the original Curio cards artists. Do you still have some copies of those cards? And I'll confess that at that point, I could not remember what the heck they were talking about. But it turns out that after some digging of my own, it turns out that that collection, it was called Curio cards, by the way. That collection was actually the world's first example of NFT art. And someone unearthed the original blockchain project that month, March 2021, 4 years after the project itself had actually been created. And the company had shut down and already gone bankrupt, no? And they discovered that it was in fact the world's oldest NFT art collection. And we were the world's first NFT artists, those 7 people that had joined that project. And over the next several months, my life got pretty crazy because there is nothing more interesting to the blockchain world than historical significance, because this is all about history and tracking and understanding how something is older or younger or kind of the same as something else, no? Because it's all about time stamping and stuff like that. So let me show you one quick thing, and then I'll go into what else happened with Curio cards. No, this chart here shows the Philippine art industry. So I'm sorry I don't have numbers from 2020 and 2021, but I guess we can just look at 2019. No? So this number here, this is $84 million. This is the entire art industry of the Philippines. This is the entire, every painter, every sculptor, every woodworker, anything that's visual, it is encompassed in this particular number, $84 million. So that means everything that was sold, everything that was traded, that's both import and export. Okay, so bear that number in mind. You only have to remember $84 million. Now, okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is the Curio cards trade performance since it was rediscovered in 2021. So again, let's go back. No, so March 2021, the Curio cards collection is rediscovered by the internet, and people go crazy trying to find the cards. And all of the original people who might have had some copies, they were able to kind of sell them at very, very good profits. And it now has a very active community that's actively trading it because it is a trading card collection after all. So the number here that you need to look at is this. There's 32,000 Ethereum in trade volume for Curio cards. I'll do the math for you because it's quite tricky. It's a little over $100 million. So this Curio cards collection with the work of 7 artists, one of them being myself, a Filipino, has done more trade volume than the entire country of the Philippines in 2019. And if you ever needed a really emphatic way to show that NFT art is massive, it is this, right? The work of 7 artists has made more money than the entire visual traditional art industry of the Philippines in less time, because the screenshot that I took was actually after about 6 months. So it was only about 6 months of trade volume at the time. What else has happened to us since then? Given that this is kind of the situation we find ourselves in now. Curio cards is the world's first NFT art collection. It has a really rabid community kind of trading it. This also happened in October of 2021. We became the first NFT art collection that was sold at auction in Christie's for cryptocurrency. So if you don't know what Christie's is a 400-year-old auction house. It's the world's oldest art auction house. This is basically the most august, most prestigious auction house on earth. This is where Da Vinci's notebook was sold to Bill Gates for $35 million. So the Curio cards collection, one set of the cards, not the entire collection, just one set of the cards was sold for 393 Ethereum. That's about $1.2 million. And that happened in October of last year. It has since been sold in other auction houses as well. Basically, kind of, if you know anything about the art world, the 2 big ones are Christie's and Sotheby's. And we've been auctioned in both now, full sets. Now, where am I trying to go with this? The first is that the NFT art world is a lot more active than a lot of people than people might think. And the second thing is that Filipinos are kind of very possibly unexpectedly, we're actually kind of at the forefront of this weird new phenomenon. There are some other screenshots of some other work that I've done that has done pretty well, but I'll just skip here na lang. I wanted to talk a little bit about marketplaces. Like where does the NFT art actually get sold? There are many of them. I'll talk about some. But these are two screenshots of these art marketplaces. One's called Nifty Gateway, one's called Maker's Place. You can think about these places kind of like Lazada or Shopee. Parang the artists are like the merchants. They just put up their work as NFTs here. And then, there's some curation, there's some moderation. If your art is really good, maybe the platform will feature it and then you'll get a little bit more eyeballs. But essentially, it's just that. No, they're marketplaces. So the artists can put their work up here, and if they sell them, the platform will take a commission. The artist will make the majority of the price, and then that's it. It's done, right? So there are a whole bunch of these. There's at least 50 of these marketplaces of varying sizes, all with different levels of specialization. This screenshot is kind of just to emphasize again how large the NFT art industry is now. Nike actually acquired one of the larger NFT collectible companies, Artifact, because they acknowledge that the next stage of collectibility is probably not going to be physical sneakers. Parang the evolution of this is going to be digital na. And Artifact is kind of one of the most put together of the current crop of NFT companies. So Nike has already gone and acquired them. They didn't actually say how much though, so that's an interesting one. It might not have been that much, or it could have been very, 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 very high. I wanted to also give a couple more examples of other Filipinos who have done well in the NFT art space. This one's called this collection is called Zodiac. And it's by a group called Nara Gallery. At least half of the artists that have contributed work to this collection are Filipinos, and the whole thing made about $110,000. So about 6 million pesos. So pretty good, no? It's a very successful drop or art launch for Nara Gallery. And if you are at all interested in finding out kind of what the state of the Philippine NFT art industry is, you can just use this hashtag on Twitter or Facebook to find all of these artists. I tried to collect some of their work here. And what makes my heart very glad is that you've got kind of the whole gamut of artists, no? So if you look at the upper right, there's like a picture of a painting of a koi. This was painted by a 7-year-old boy who lives in Makati. His name's Sevi. And then if you look at the bottom right, with kind of the Philippine flag iconography, that's by Team Manila. So you're getting everyone from the extreme range of art participants now in the Philippine community. You've got budding young, very young artists, and then you've also got established brands that are already trying to play around with what we can do with NFTs. And then everyone in the middle of that, including myself and a lot of other artists, they're all trying to make their names known within this new paradigm. And it's very, very interesting to kind of watch this. Recently, I've been focusing a lot on kind of opening up these avenues for more established Philippine brand names. Obviously, air quotes on the word brand name. No? So one of my recent collaborations was with Heart Evangelista. So we took some of her paintings that she had made during the lockdown, and we turned them into what we call motion paintings. So we created animations, and then we created music. So we did the music was provided by the Manila Philharmonic. So we have Heart's paintings, my animations, and art direction, and then music provided by Philharmonic. And we had two pieces that we sold. One of them went for 2 million pesos. The other one went for, I believe that's about 1.6 million pesos. So total of a little over 3.5. I guess what's interesting with that is that the digital versions of those paintings made more money than kind of any of her traditional oil on canvas paintings when she sells them at auction in a museum. So that was kind of an interesting indicator of kind of the relative strength of NFT art. More recently, I also helped. So I forgot to put titles on this one, but these are two more NFTs that I worked on with the creators of Trece, which is a Filipino comic book that was adapted into a Netflix series. So I did the same thing. I worked with the original artist, and then I turned his work into motion paintings, again by adding animation and some visual effects, and then also having musical score added to it. This made a little over 1 million pesos in its drop. So again, pretty good for, especially if you compare it to like in the context of the Philippine comic industry, like that's a very successful amount of money in this kind of launch. So again, where am I going with this? I think that there's a lot of stuff that's happening right now that a lot of people think are just conceptual. No, so when we read about NFT art, we always think, well, okay, that's that massive sale that artist did. I mean, he's based in the States, whatever. So that's kind of a first world thing, but it's actually already happening here in the Philippines, and it's happening kind of around these brands that you actually already know. No, so Heart Evangelista, Trece. I'm working on some other ones that are even more well known than either of them, and it's always in collaboration, right? Because I'm kind of in a unique position right now to act as kind of an ambassador to the tradition, a kind of bridge, maybe that's a better word for it, a bridge between the traditional art world, the traditional Philippine art world, and this crypto art space, because I come from both, and I've managed to be just very fortunate enough to be one of the earliest examples of NFT artists in the world. So I'm kind of using that position to help bring more of these brands over to kind of find their footing in this new world, and that's working out pretty well. I'm going to end just with this one. So this is the other thing that I'm doing. So other than kind of working with established brands, I also created this what we call the Crypto Pop Art Guild. And what this is it's an organization meant to support underprivileged Filipino artists. These are artists who come from households that are making less than 20,000 pesos per month, basically right on the edge of low income. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to train them to become NFT artists, so that they don't have to take that minimum wage job wherever they are. They don't have to settle for that. They can make their money on the internet. So the Art Guild is meant to connect them with opportunities in the NFT world. So I've been doing this since September of last year. We have 200 members. We are about to do our first big art launch in early April. And we're very hopeful that that will do well enough that our artists will have earn enough from it that they'll be okay for the next few months. No, so the goal here is not to turn everyone into millionaires, although that would be wonderful if we could. I think the goal here is to open up these doors, because for once in our lives, there is no geographic barrier anymore for Filipino art. We can do this stuff just as well as anyone else, just as well as anyone who lives in the States or in Japan or in Paris or London, wherever these other art centers are in the world, and we can do it just as well as them. And the effect of NFT art, at least in the Philippines, is that it has democratized the barrier. It has democratized the entry into this world, because it literally does not matter where you are. So that's kind of the message that I wanted to end with. You'll hopefully hear more from CPAG. So we call ourselves CPAG, because we emphasize hard work. It's not about luck. It's about working hard and persevering. So the guild is called CPAG, and we hope to honor what the Philippine art community is capable of doing with our work. And so that's it. Thanks so much for the time. Hope you found that interesting.
Thank you, Luis. I'm so amazed that, Luis and I have been in several talks together, but I'm still so amazed with the stories and what Luis has been doing to the community. Again, Luis, crazy story indeed. But again, thank you for simplifying the concept or the NFT concept for us. That basically NFTs are basically tokens, specifically a certificate of ownership and being able to track history, right, Luis, of history of an item or piece, while at the same time, the original creator can still get royalties from it, even if passed on to several owners, several owners. So again, thank you, Luis. Please stay. At this point, I'd like to welcome back, if you can, if you're still here. I hope our friends and sponsor from Union Bank of the Philippines, Mr. Ramon Duarte, of course, with their partner Xlog, represented by Mr. Joey Inyon. And also, I'd like to welcome back the Managing Director of Accenture Philippines, Mr. Arvin Yason. And of course, again, Mr. Luis Buenaventura, Country Manager of Yield Guild Games Philippines. Welcome again, gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you back for our open forum. It's around 15 to 20 minutes. I'm flooded with a lot of the questions right here. I have supposedly I just have my notepad, my law firm notepad, but I came out with a 3 bond paper of questions. So yeah, I guess it's 1:27 now. I'll get right into it. So probably I'll start first with the general question, which will be, I guess, advantageous to all of our attendees and listeners and viewers. I'll start off with Mon and Arvin, if you don't mind. Of course, as we all know, the pandemic has allowed digital transactions to become a must in doing business here, especially in the Philippines and of course worldwide. From this period of rapid growth and adoption, what do you? Yeah, sorry. What blockchain-based product or service do you think must become a default or adopted permanently in, I guess, your industry or in any industry for that matter, and why do you think so? What blockchain-based product or service? Mon, you want to start with that?
Yeah, actually, Arvin already talked about it, but I really feel strongly about the need for advancements in identity management, no? And yeah, digital identity, that's again in our business, in our industry of banking and finance, it's such a hindrance. KYC, identity fraud, identity theft is such a big issue, and it's manifestations of it are all over the news, and some of the scams have been happening lately, and I've seen a lot of the models for digital identity. We've done our own experimentations through our unit UBX. So we have our own sort of like digital identity platform. The national ID, the PhilSys national ID, is of course a great step forward, that we actually have finally a great a standard national ID. But hopefully that will evolve quickly to become something that can be consumed digitally as well, no? And it's still not quite the same as some of the other attributes that the digital or blockchain-based identity management can enable. The aspects of identity sovereignty, where identity owner can control where his identity information, especially if it's PII information, goes, right? So that one is one thing I'll call out right away, and that affects our business tremendously, and I think it affects pretty much everybody's businesses, because that would be such a great enabler.
Thanks, Mon. Digital identity. Arvin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say Mon talked about digital identity already, and I think part of it is just being able to, particularly if you're a small to medium enterprise now, and particularly again given what Luis talked about, that there's a growing population of local citizens who actually are getting rich on digital assets. I think being able to accept payments in a less fiction-filled manner, directly, potentially through crypto wallets, to block wallets, etc. Because again, the restriction being, if you're earning in Ethereum right now and you're an artist, you sell the painting, you have to go through and sell your cryptocurrency, and You have to get that transmitted in pesos, that type of thingy. But it's a lot of friction that, if can be removed, can be beneficial for all parties really. So being able to actually accept digital payments, and again, we have the early solutions like non-blockchain based like Gcash, obviously in Payma and all of that. But again, there are digital asset creators there who have a lot of assets already, a lot of value with digital assets, being able to help them get real world physical value faster and easier. No, even being able to buy groceries easily would be a big win for us. No, and I think we'll see a lot of other use cases that we haven't even imagined yet. No, at this point also.
Correct. Thanks, Arvin. So yeah, Mon, if I could go back to you. So I guess in relation to that, in relation to your presentation earlier, and for the benefit of our other attendees and executives here who came in late after your presentation, can you share with us again, if you don't mind, or summarize, or even add your current live banking products that you offer in Union Bank and services that, of course, uses blockchain technology? And I guess briefly, what are your key takeaways in implementing and rolling out these products and services? Probably even talk about hurdles, if any. Bon?
Okay, thanks again. Wow, what a perfect question coming from Arvin's inputs on payments. No, so today I really focused on supply chain financing. It's my business in my group at the bank, and it is a very real and very alive and real world case today. No, but it's not the only one we have. The other one I would like to point out in the bank is, in fact, payments, has to do with payments. This is our I2I product now, which is actually championed or marketed and built largely by our tech subsidiary called UBX. No? So I2I stands for individual to individual, island to island, institution to institution, and basically, it is a blockchain-based facility for making payments between, at this point, are structured between rural banks. What we've seen is that the rural banks, believe it or not, Philippine rural banks are largely left out of are largely in a way unbanked themselves. They're not part of the national payment networks. So
Correct.
With this facility, which by the way we built on blockchain based on another application actually of blockchain, which is stablecoin. Union Bank actually introduced the first Philippine stablecoin, BSP approved stablecoin. That is the common underlying token, digital token that's used as the medium for this value transfer. So it's really in this version we have today. It is intended as a way of enabling transfer payments between union banks and across into the larger banking payment networks, right? Through Union Bank as a gateway. We have like 220 financial institutions and rural banks signed up in there today. We have transactions live and going. I'm sorry, I cannot share specific details on that. But that's another example of what we're doing. I can go on about that, but let me switch. Again, we're doing something with Akin, which is our digital identity platform, again through UBX. That's a live case, but to be honest, that's not nearly as active today as it is as perhaps SEF and I2I is already. In terms of hindrances, challenges in getting all of this off the ground, there's so many ideas, but getting the skilled people to get to work on these ideas that we have across the industry and across other industries is a big challenge. We have so many projects in the pipeline that we want to do, and we've had to become very creative in finding ways to get those talents, get those people who know how to do this kind of not just blockchain type coding, but essentially running this kind of projects in the new way of doing things in an agile agile manner, high speed iterations. And that's been a tremendously big challenge for us. So we even set up a blockchain center of excellence where we certified young developers largely so participated to learn the technologies and learn how to build in that. Yeah, so that's really, I would say, one of the biggest hindrance for now. Otherwise, it's the bigger challenges of understanding, educating, getting over the mental getting partners and those who can benefit to understand and get over the mental calisthenics you need to do to really get comfortable with the tech, right? But once you get there, you'll really, and as I always put it, and once you learn how to trust the math behind all of this, you'll really see the value that blockchain can bring to all our businesses.
Thank you. Thank you, Mon. Solid initiatives by Union Bank. Again, thank you for leading the way on like being able to use this technology. So now going to your partner, right? Xlog. So Joey, yeah, I can see you here. Thank you. Thanks again for being here. So again, if you don't mind, in layman's or in simplest terms, can you explain again how blockchain-based solutions enable or improve supply chain management, and how, I guess is the real more important question, how receptive is the shipping or logistics industry when it comes to this? Joey?
Thank you, Tony Mark. Yeah, actually, more than anything, it's all about the trust that it creates for the industry. And with this kind of trust, it also affects the turnaround of business. So what do I mean by it? In logistics, it's very important to really have a faster turnaround, of course. There are a lot of moving parts. So let me explain an example in how we were able to use the SC or maximize the SCF product. So because of the trust, first of all, because of the trust and because of the capabilities of the SCF product, we were able to get these SMEs aligned with Union Bank, which, like what Ramon was mentioning earlier in his presentation, right, this wasn't something that was possible for all banks and even for them before. And these are the businesses who would really need this kind of help or this kind of aid, right? And now with SCF, and since payments can now be processed on a much faster pace, and alongside with our digitization of the operations, invoices can now be instantly verified. If I may share now, before invoices would normally, let's say a trucker delivers their goods. Now the trucker would pick up this document from, let's say, the port. They would have to manually send it to the office of the finance. Finance would have to review, go to the operation side to verify all of these transactions before they can even say that, okay, I'm good to pay this. And that's when the terms would kick in. Now all of this, we just basically streamlined the process, making all of that accessible online. They can verify whether the trip has been completed, whether the documents have been provided, and you now have the invoice on the platform already as well. And now when they transact or when they pay with Union Bank, they can also make sure that the payments that they're doing on the platform has the backed up transaction in another platform that's also owned by the same bank, right? So I guess that's really the benefit there of applying blockchain-based products into the supply chain and logistics operations.
Thank you, Joey. Perfect. So with that, probably I'll shift while still talking about blockchain. I'll go now to Luis. Luis, as you all know, wow, this especially I think 2021 and of course now 2022, everyone is talking about NFTs, crypto art, play to earn. But more specifically, we wanted to ask, so as we all know, probably all over the news, the Philippines has been identified as one of the key countries or key economies in the NFT market, given the percentage of Filipino NFT holders in comparison with other countries. As mentioned to you earlier, I was reading, I was with Korean lawyers, and apparently they're just fourth in the world, right? So, but for us, how and for you, how does NFT consumption or participation shape you think our or how our market will view or accept blockchain-based technology in a general sense, Luis?
Sure. Of course. Okay. So let's go back to why why we are leading the world first. So it's really because of play to earn games, and I really just mean one play to earn game, Axie Infinity. So the reason why we are leading the world is because there's 1.5 million Filipinos playing Axie Infinity on any given day. Now, regardless of what other proportion of Filipinos there are that own NFT, anything else, that 1.5 million is enough for us to kind of be in the dominant position globally. Now, why is that? Well, because Axie Infinity allows people to earn a viable income from playing games. And for people who were stuck and unemployed during the lockdown, it was a godsend. So yung narrative na yun is very hard to combat. That is going to constantly be the thing that people will remember when it comes to things like NFTs. It is an alternative source of income. And those 1.5 million Filipinos who started playing this game over the last year and a half, every single one of them had never used cryptocurrency, did not care about blockchain. So these are all newly minted converts to blockchain. In fact, one of our most difficult jobs as Yield Guild, because we're a play to earn organization, no? So our most difficult job is teaching people the basics of crypto security, because they don't know that things like your private key, your seed phrase, these things like that. These are concepts to them that it doesn't map onto anything else that they are familiar with. So they don't know how important it is to keep that stuff safe, for example. So we get lots of stories of people getting hacked or victimized or basically taken advantage of because they don't understand this technology much. So we identify ourselves kind of ironically, not as a crypto company per se, but as an educational company and a humanitarian one. Because yung focuses namin as an organization are around education and then kind of putting money into the hands of people who need it the most. And this is the first time in my career in crypto that's actually been possible, because for a really long time, crypto was very much kind of an upper class kind of thing. And just because, it's the volatility is not friendly to people who are low income. So yeah, anyway, it's a very interesting gateway drug, I guess, is the message I was going for.
Thanks, Luis. On that note, Luis, so since we're at the topic of play to earn, so what's your prediction? So do you think, since it's booming now, do you think this trend will continue to grow? And, briefly, how do you foresee this industry to further grow? Luis?
Yeah, so Yield Guild itself is not just a purveyor of Axie Infinity and stuff like that. No, we're actually the most active investor in the space. So we have invested in 48 other play-to-earn games. So clearly we believe passionately that this area of kind of focus is going to get bigger and bigger over time. It has never happened in the history of video games that there was only one game that mattered, right? That has never been true. So we think that it's only a matter of time before a whole slew of new competitors to Axie Infinity will make themselves known. In fact, there are a few right now that we are piloting with a small group of our community. And we think that we're already kind of making those speculative investments around those games. And we think that those games are going to be the next big thing. I mean, obviously, this is not financial advice, but we think that there's a lot of stuff and so parang the play-to-earn phenomenon means so much in emerging economies. Because you make $100 a month or $200 a month, your average North American person is not going to care about that. But here it matters.
Makes sense.
Here it matters. And this is why Yield Guild, our stronghold is here in the Philippines. Our next market is India. Our next biggest market is Brazil. Because it's all emerging economies that kind of can care about these amounts of money that these games are generating for them.
Right. Makes sense. Thanks, Luis. So on that note as well, Mon and Arvin, I'll go back to you. So aside from these play to earn platforms and of course blockchain projects, what are your thoughts on the adaptability, or probably the better word would be a readiness of the market and of consumers in using blockchain enabled technologies? So I guess from a consumer standpoint or consumer or market perspective, what my question is, what should the business sector focus on to improve blockchain technology acceptance or awareness? Let's start with you, Arvin, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sige. I think honestly the pandemic has helped out a lot in in the willingness and the readiness of of this even small to medium enterprises. Kasi over the past 2 years, everyone has done their shopping on Lazada or Shopee, right? And everyone's used GCash or Paymaya to pay. And from both the buyer standpoint and the seller standpoint, any blockchain powered solution should be indistinguishable from a traditional technology payment solution. Right? It could be blockchain powered, it could be traditional database. Again, blockchain has certain features that make it more appealing in the long term, right? So I think the short answer to your question is it shouldn't be a problem to adopt blockchain powered solutions for payments, etc. Because again, even my Lola has been using GCash and Paymaya, right? So it should buyer to entry should be much lower now, thankfully. No, and again, from the end user standpoint, it doesn't matter if it's blockchain in the back end. It will matter again in the long term because of better security, etc., etc. But yeah, the market is ripe for the adoption of blockchain. But again, Mon talked about the lack of talent. I feel the same also. My team, diba? That's really what probably will prevent us. The other problem is, or the other potential, this one last thing is regulation or over-regulation potentially is also a problem for the industry. We see this in other territories already.
Right.
So the government so far has been supportive and hopefully they will not over-regulate as well.
Right. Thanks, Arvin. Let's not go to that. That should be that will be my topic. So yeah. Thanks, Arvin. Mon, thoughts?
Okay. Two comments. One very general and one very specific. Building on what Arvin said, yeah, the market is ready to adopt this. And I think it's up to those industry players who are in a position to transform the industries, the ecosystems that they are players in, to bring things forward to digital. In other words, what am I saying is get moving with your digital transformation. So many companies were forced to digitize their operations because of the pandemic. And so many of those realized that, hey, why wasn't I even doing this pre-pandemic, right? It's a better way to do things, right? And digital transformation can be so greatly aided by blockchain technology, right? Because of the basic ideas of mitigation of trust issues, blah, 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 right?
Correct.
So that's my big general response to that. My specific response is there's one niggling piece here, which is closer to my heart and my business around payments. And that is actually a little bit regulatory related. And that is the adoption of electronic receipting and electronic invoicing. That's a big hindrance. We're talking about effecting payments for invoicing, trade payments and business to business. But when it comes to complete that process, there's still a piece of paper that apparently needs to be handed from one partner to the other, right? That's a big drag.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have one piece of paper, then you might as well have 5, right? The whole point is to eliminate it all. So that's one front that I think gladly I can say, and I know the government is moving forward on. There have been, it is actually embedded in the Train 2, right? But that needs to move faster, right? And that's one thing I think we can all help as businessmen and influencers in our various sectors to move forward, because that would be a great enabler.
Yeah, thanks, Mon. Yeah, regarding receipting, invoicing, yeah, sad but true. But I guess that will be another topic again altogether. So probably what I'm doing here to all of our attendees and of course members, I'm doing my best to compile all of your questions and be able to ask it in one go. And I guess since we're running over time, for my last question to Luis and Joey, or even Mon and Arvin, if you wish to chime in as well. A lot of our listeners or viewers are asking, what risks have you encountered this is a general question, in terms of using or integrating blockchain-based products and services? How did you manage or overcome these risks? I guess a related question there is if you can elaborate, what are the security features to ensure the integrity of the blockchain ledger or technology? Probably I'll start with you, Joey. Let's say, risks and overcoming this risk and security features that you can share. Thank you, Joey.
Thank you, Attorney Mark. Actually, to be honest, we have not yet encountered any risks in terms of integrating with our blockchain-based products. One of the very significant one is, of course, the one of Union Banks. So far, nothing really on that. But what we do, right, in terms of security, because Union Bank is the SCF product of Union Bank is separate from Xlog's product. So they would have their own security aspect, or they would have their own ways of making sure that the transactions there are secure. But on the Xlog side also, one of the security aspects, of course, other than the more basic security protections that must be in place for the platforms, what we do is, first of all, the transparency and the immutability of the history of a transaction. So I shared earlier that every movement, every communication, every milestone, or even updates from drivers and from the truckers are all logged into one single source of truth, so that we can show the customers that, hey, this is what actually transpired in your transaction. These are the timestamps. These are all the records, and you can't delete it. You can't dispose of it. It doesn't get deleted by the platform, or can't be deleted by the user. So even before an invoice again is presented to the bank, we already add these additional layers of protection and security to make sure that indeed the transaction is there's trust in the transaction and there's legitimacy in the transaction.
Perfect. Thank you, Joey. Luis, if you're still there, Luis.
I'm still here. Sorry, I had a technical difficulty with the camera.
No problem. Luis, while this not related, well, it is related to NFTs and of course play to earn, but more on the business sense, which since we've been working together for years as well, and you've been an advocate of blockchain technology. What do you think are these risks that can be that you have encountered? Do you want to share, or how to overcome these risks? And I guess security features, technology.
Sure. Okay, so I'll probably have to go a little technical with this one. The problem with blockchains is that they actually don't scale very well, especially if we're talking about open public ledgers. We've seen this time and time again with Bitcoin, Ethereum, kind of these early stage, these first generation blockchains actually are notoriously bad at scaling. The second generation ones like Solana and Binance Smart Chain a little bit better, but ultimately these guys have a very finite amount of block space in order to carry transactions. So no matter what happens, none of them will actually scale beyond a particular threshold. So the solutions that we are coming up with now are what we call layer 2 solutions. And that's why within Ethereum, you've got these sub chains. I guess that's kind of a simple way to think about it. There's sub blockchains that are built on top of Ethereum, and they are meant to cater to specific interests. And examples of that are Polygon, Arbitrum, and a whole bunch of other ones. And like you could go down this entire list, and there would be like literally dozens of them. And every major blockchain will have its own version of layer 2, because they've all kind of figured out that if we are talking about public open blockchains, they all will have that same problem of finite space. Yeah, so that's kind of another main technical challenge that we're trying to kind of overcome, no? And it seems like layer 2 solutions are the way to go about it. Within that, there's also a lot of security issues. When you have competing blockchains, Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, Solana, for example, do you want to be able to interoperate between those things? Because you can actually put tokens from Ethereum, you can actually move them over into Solana if you wanted to. However, there is some great security risks there. One of the largest blockchain hacks in history was just kind of carried out just a month ago. It was about $300 million lost. It was primarily because there was a bridge between Ethereum and Solana, and the hackers found a security flaw in the way that it had been programmed. So stuff like this is always going to be risky because we are kind of at the bleeding edge of technology. And unfortunately, we're talking about financial systems here, right? In order for us to prove that they work, you actually have to put some money in them. So there's always going to be a risk for early adopters that they are always going to have some small risk because they are engaging or participating in these early stage systems. So that's kind of the way that I like to talk to people about this stuff. No, never forget that this is very early stage, and that to a certain extent, it's all still very experimental. So don't bet the farm on it. Bet a small part of the farm, not the whole farm. That's it.
Thanks, Luis. Perfect. I think that also answers a lot of the questions in the Q&A section about hacking, scams, speculation, etc. But I guess briefly, Mon and Arvin, feel free to close. You want to share your thoughts about that before I close the session. Mon?
I think it's been a great discussion. Again, thanks for inviting us over here. I hope that the specific sharing that I focused on, kind of diving into supply chain as a use case, established that precisely the point of what we're trying to flesh out here. Given even notwithstanding all the issues just now described by Luis here, that a lot of this stuff is bleeding edge. The value, the use cases of the value of the technology in this specific and many varied use cases, of which my SEF is just one example, right? It's pretty much proven, right? It's pretty much proven. And to go back to what Arvin was saying, now is the time to try to enter into this space. And there's a lot of opportunities here that can be harvested, right? There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of misunderstanding. A lot of it is, let's say, contamination, right? By what we hear about the original cases or use cases of blockchain, which is crypto, right? And a lot of things happening. But the underlying technology is infinitely useful, right? And it's time to get in there. And that's really what we're talking about, right? A lot of the fear is around, anonymous, things are hidden. Precisely the opposite. That's what blockchain can do, provide transparency. I mean, you don't have to go on a public chain. You don't have to, you don't have to use crypto to make payments. You can build your own permission network and it's all programmed into the contracts, right? Who can see what, when, right? So get into it. Don't fear it. We've opened at Union Bank as part of our digital transformation. We perhaps were, as I put it now, in the right place at a bad time, right? With the pandemic and all, right? But because of this this rush of move to digital, it validated all of our early efforts that started even pre-pandemic, right? And we're seeing the benefits of that. So I'd like others to share in those benefits by getting in there and initiating their own programs around the technology, because this is the way forward.
Perfect. Perfectly said. Arvin, you want to add anything?
Well, I'll keep it short. I think again, the blockchain has a lot of promise. The caution that I will add to everything that Mon and Joey have said and Luis is blockchain is one technology that can be leveraged. But again, in a lot of these use cases, you actually need to bring in other technologies like IoT to really fully maximize the benefits. No, and I think the risk is particularly for executives, for the C-suite, is they hear about using this in one area like insurance, and they think blockchain alone will solve all of the problems. The reality is we need to bring in other technologies to really make it work, to make it secure, to make it delightful, and to make it scale also. Okay.
Perfect. I totally agree. Thank you, Mon. I guess for everyone, blockchain is not only about cryptocurrency. It's not only about Bitcoin. Again, blockchain, the underlying technology is definitely useful, as Mon said. Once again, thank you, Mon. Mon Duarte of Union Bank of the Philippines, Joey Inyon of Xlog. Thank you, Arvin Yason of Accenture Philippines. And of course, last but not least, Mr. Luis Benaventura of Yield Games for joining us in today's webinar. Thank you again, Union Bank of the Philippines, for partnering with us in this event. Thank you for sharing with us all of this information today. And I guess all of our members were able to understand blockchain more and real world use cases of this technology. To wrap up and end our program, may I call on my co-vice chairman of the ICT Committee of Phoenix and Executive Vice President of Ascent Micro Technologies, Inc., Mr. Bong Paloma. Bong, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. As shared earlier by Mark and Mike, this is ICT Committee's first webinar for the year. And since we are on overtime, indeed, it is a very relevant topic to kick off the year. Today, our speakers have shared various real-world use cases of blockchain. Mon talked about Union Bank supply chain financing that creates transparency, automation, accountability, improved cash flow, and reducing business risk and eliminating fraud. Then Joey talks about their digital logistics solutions integrated with Union Bank supply chain financing solution to provide an end-to-end automated processes that increase efficiency and enhance user experience from a single source of truth. Arvin talked about digital identity, customer loyalty, enhancing customer experience. Smart insurance hinges on digital identity, and if coupled with IoT, would trigger proactive claims of insurance. And an insurance that allows companies to offer a personalized one, again, using IoT. He also shared a use case in healthcare, where blockchain provides for secure data sharing by several actors and parties for better collaboration and delivery of healthcare services. He also talked about the last mile as patients and consumers, giving us the peace of mind about the product we're buying by identifying its source, its logistics journey, the handling experience, giving us more data, thus educating us patients, paving for more improved patient care, and allowing for a service provider to offer better care. Luis talked about non-fungible token for art. Very different topic, but very exciting. Thank you for sharing. Using blockchain, you can now assign a digital certificate of ownership that allows you to track art's provenance, its original source, and enabling for royalty payments to the original creator, which is a good one for the artist. There you go, a plethora of use cases, and we expect blockchain to disrupt a lot of business models today and in the future. I hope that this webinar will prepare you to adopt blockchain in your respective organizations. On behalf of Phoenix and the ICT Committee, we thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you at our next Phoenix webinar. Thank you again to our speakers and our sponsor, Union Bank of the Philippines, for making this webinar possible. Thank you. Have a good day. Stay safe and healthy. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bong. Bye. Thank you, Arvin, Joey, Mon.
You're done, Attorney.